Shalom, welcome to the Jewish Task Force, J.T.F. I'm Chaim ben Pesach, and we have another program with the great David ben Moshe. On this program, we're going to reveal to you the real truth behind thousands of beepers and walkie-talkies in Lebanon and Syria that belong to Hezbollah terrorists that are blowing up. The Israeli operation that really stunned the Arab world and should stun the whole world. And what is the real truth behind that? You're not going to hear this anywhere else, what you're going to hear on this program. What is the real truth behind that incredible operation? Because if you've seen James Bond movies and you've seen Mission Impossible and all these other movies over the years, the truth is only with Israeli intelligence those things really happen in our day. They don't happen with the intelligence agencies of any other country. They only happen with Israel when Israel wants to do that. But anyway, we're going to discuss some aspects of this and the real story behind this in a way that you won't hear anywhere else. But before we get to that, this program is dedicated to Ilui Neshamot, elevating of the souls for Sharon Mitman, Shlomo ben Sarah, Dorit bat Sarah, Reuven ben Shoshana, and Ruth bat Sarah. And to Ilui Neshamot, elevating of the souls for Malka bat Meir, Allegra bat Shlomo, Daniel Nankin, Victor Chazdai, Pesach Zeb ben Dov, Lunita Adler, Shifra Hoffman, Reuven Hoffman, Barry Hoffman, Rab Meir Kahana, Rab Binyamin Kahana, Tzipora Fegi bat Liba, Yosef ben Meir, Robert Mittman, Dennis Shore, Helen Friedman, Charles Zolat, and Yair Lavin. Well, we saw the incredible stories that once we used to get used to these things happening after from 1948 to 1967 and in the 60s and even early 70s, the incredible actions that Israel took against her enemies stunned the world. And again, as I said a moment ago, you see James Bond stories about espionage and sabotage and all types of intrigue in movies and in stories and books that have come out over the years. And this is as old as literature itself, stories like that. But that doesn't really happen. The CIA could never pull off something like this. And the KGB and British and French and German intelligence could never pull this stuff off. Only Israel is able to pull this stuff off. And I'm going to tell you very bluntly why that's true. Because the Jews are God's chosen people. God gave the Jews ingenious ability to do incredible things if they want to. The problem is they're nuts. That's the problem. The Jews are insane. That's their problem. They use their genius for self-destructive things and refuse to do what they should do, to be a light unto the nations and a holy nation, a nation of priests, which is what the Jews are destined to be, which is what the Jewish destiny really is all about. And they refuse to do that. But we saw thousands of beepers and walkie-talkies in Lebanon and Syria blowing up in the hands of Hezbollah terrorists. I mean, what an operation this is. Going deep into enemy territory, controlling the beepers and walkie-talkies of your enemies. Thousands of them all over two different countries, two enemy countries, Lebanon and Syria. And blowing them up simultaneously 2 days in a row. Tuesday was the beepers, and today were the walkie-talkies. Just incredible. Thousands of Arab Nazis were injured. About 20 were killed, and thousands were injured. And
I saw a video where this Muslim was in a market with fruit all over, picking out his fruit, and all of a sudden, I guess his pager was in his pants pocket. It blew up, and the person that was narrating the video was laughing hysterically, saying he blew his male organ off. He was on the floor. He could barely move. So something else Ashadina found this morning, it's not just the walkie-talkies and the pagers. They're doing it with solar panels now, too.
So this is incredible. I mean, this is incredible. You have to admit, this is brilliant. I mean, this is as ingenious and bold as it gets. But and something that you haven't heard much about. which was even more incredible than this story, is the fact that last week Israel went into a Syrian and Iranian underground military base deep in Syria. Israelis went in there and blew it up. A deep underground military base in enemy territory, highly guarded, underground, deep underground, and they just blew the whole thing up of Syrians and Iranians. Now, here's the question that has to be asked. If they can pull things like this off, and believe me, again, no other intelligence agency of any other country has ever been able to do things like this. This is unprecedented. This is just brilliant and bold. But if they could pull things like this off, why aren't they doing this to Iran's nuclear bomb-making program, going into Iran and doing it? We know that they're inside Iran's nuclear bomb-making program. Israeli intelligence has people inside that program. How do we know that? Because Netanyahu, that putz, went before the United Nations and revealed that Iran is planning this and that, and here are all the documents, and they showed all the documents and everything else. They showed everything that you could only get if you were deep inside the program. So they have people deep inside all of Iran's nuclear bomb-making programs and facilities. If they have people inside, why aren't they blowing it up? Why don't they do to Iran's nuclear bomb-making program, which is a much greater threat than Hezbollah? Why don't they go, because nuclear bombs, obviously that's a Holocaust, God forbid. Why don't they go into Iran's underground nuclear bomb-making program and do there what they did in Syria, in the underground base in Syria? Or do there what they've done with the beepers and the walkie-talkies? And then people say, well, but there are dozens of, the Iranians spread it out over dozens of different places. The Israelis have proven that they can hit people in thousands of different places simultaneously if they really want to. But it's underground. The Israelis proven in Syria again last week, and they've done it before also, that they can blow things up underground as well. They can go in and blow things up underground. But we don't know where everything is, and it's hard. The Israelis proved when Netanyahu, the putz, was before the United Nations. He proved that Israelis know exactly every single move the Iranians are making on the nuclear front. They know what's going on. You know why they won't touch Iran's nuclear bomb-making program and do they've done little things there, fringe things, but not striking at the program itself. You know why they won't do it to the program itself? Because the late Joe Biden doesn't want them to do it. In fact, when they struck in Lebanon and Syria, do you know that they made sure that the late Joe Biden and Kamala Harris knew about it first? They're so afraid that they're going to make the United States angry. They're so afraid that they're going to upset the United States government. They announced to the United States government in advance when they're going to do something. They didn't tell them exactly what they're going to do because the United States probably would have warned Hezbollah because the Biden-Harris administration is on the side of the Arab Muslim Nazis that want to destroy Israel. They want the Arab Muslim Nazis to win against Israel, which means genocide for the Jewish people. And yes, they literally want that. They view Israel as a problem. They want good relations with the Arab Muslim world. It would be nice if you didn't have Israel in the way, then you'd have better relations with the Arab Muslim world and millions of Arabs could come to the United States to live here. We'd have millions more refugees from the Arab world. What a wonderful, boy, that would be wonderful. Millions of Muslims, we'd have such good relations with the 2 billion Muslims in the world that they'd come flooding into the United States because when you have good relations, you can't turn them away. And if Israel weren't there, instead of Israel, who do you think would be on the front line? Israel's on the front line now against Islamic terrorism. Who do you think would be on the front line if Israel weren't there? I'll give you one hint. It's the country that the late Joe Biden is president of, supposedly, when he's not in a coma. Anyway, so Israel doesn't strike because of this obsession You can't. And the same thing, by the way, Donald Trump also. Donald Trump is not good for Israel on this issue. He's better than Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, and we have to vote for Donald Trump for that reason. He is better than them. But still, Donald Trump also doesn't want war. He doesn't want to. The only way to stop nuclear insanity in the Middle East and a nuclear holocaust is war. That's the only way to stop it. Israel has to strike against that nuclear program and has to wage war against that regime in Iran. Otherwise, the whole Middle East is going to become nuclearized, and that will lead to a nuclear holocaust, God forbid. So the real story is the Mossad, Israeli intelligence, geniuses, unbelievable geniuses. They get inside organizations. They do it brilliantly. They wind up knowing more about organizations than the leaders of the organizations know about their own organizations. I mean, brilliant. The details that Netanyahu displayed before the United Nations when he came. And by the way, how insane, how stupid, how self-hating, how disgusting that he has to go and reveal to the Iranians that they're inside. Instead of revealing, why tell them that you're inside their program? They didn't even know how deep Israel was inside their program. They had no idea until Netanyahu bragged about it before the United Nations to gain political points in the election in Israel. You're inside their program, blow the damn thing up in Iran. Destroy their nuclear program. And I'm not against blowing up beepers and walkie-talkies of terrorists in Lebanon, but that's not the solution. The solution is destroying Hezbollah and destroying Iran's nuclear bomb-making program and destroying Hamas and expelling all of their supporters. The hostile populations in those countries that support the terrorists. If you support terrorists, you're a terrorist. If you support Hitler and the Nazis, you're a Nazi. Anyone who supports Adolf Hitler is a Nazi. Anyone who supports Joseph Stalin is a communist, or Karl Marx is a communist. Anyone who supports Islamic terrorism is an Islamic terrorist. And that means, by the way, that not only are the local populations there who support the terrorists and have always supported the terrorists, not only are they terrorists, they're not innocent civilians, they're terrorists because they support and back the terrorists. Whenever there are elections, they vote for the terrorists. They always demonstrate for the terrorists. They hide the terrorists. They raise money for the terrorists. They are the terrorists. And by the way, anyone who supports Islamic terrorism is a terrorist. Kamala Harris's daughter, who raised $8 million for a Hamas terrorist front group, she's a terrorist. Kamala Harris's daughter is a terrorist. She raised money for a Hamas front group that helps the Hamas terrorists in Gaza. She raised $8 million for them. Israel cannot trust anyone. Am levadad yishkonu v'goyim lo yitchashav. Lo, it's a nation that shall dwell alone and not be reckoned among the nations, it says in our Torah. That's what God says. The Jews were meant to be alone in this battle. Why? Because if the Jews were involved with the United States or other countries in doing this, then people would say, oh, it's not such a miracle. It's no big deal. Without America, they could never do it. That's what people would say. And that would be a chilul Hashem, a desecration of God's name to say that. But when Israel, tiny little Israel's all alone and pulls these things off, that's a kiddush Hashem, that's sanctifying God's name, because then they can't say it's because of America and American foreign aid, or because of this, or because of that excuse, and this excuse, or that excuse. People know then that this is God's people doing what should be done. And the whole purpose of Israel is to show the world that there's a God who rules over nations. That's why 10 of ye shall chase 1,000 of them, and 100 of ye shall put 10,000 of them to flight, it says in the Bible. You're going to be outnumbered 100 to 1, and you're going to win miraculous victories to show the whole world who is God. And to show the whole world to show all these arrogant leaders. And by the way, when I say arrogant leaders, I'm not only referring to Kamala Harris and the late Joe Biden. I'm referring to Donald Trump. He's also arrogant. He thinks he's a god. He's very arrogant and very prideful, which you're not supposed to be as a leader. And that's one of the reasons why we have problems in this election. We still have to support him. He's much better than Kamala Harris and Joe Biden. Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, if they win, if Kamala Harris wins, we're in a lot of trouble. We have to support Donald Trump, but Donald Trump is in trouble in the polls now. And it's because he's not humble and because he's not what a leader should be. She mentions in the debate that his crowd, people are bored and leaving his crowds early, which was a lie. She deliberately did that because she knows he can't stand anyone questioning crowd size. I have the biggest crowds ever. I have the best ever. She knew that this would get him. And he right away goes for it. He right away jumps into it and starts answering and making a big deal about it instead of focusing on the truth. The truth is he was a better president. The truth is the economy was better when he was president. The truth is inflation was better. They just had today, the day they were doing this show, they had to cut interest rates 0.5%. They're finally cutting interest rates. The reason they're cutting interest rates were triple what they were under Trump. Interest rates were three times as high under Kamala Harris as they were under Trump. And what an amazing coincidence. 6 weeks before the election, this is happening. They're taking these actions. 6 weeks before the election. The establishment doesn't want Trump to win. They want Kamala Harris to win. God forbid. And
so the price of gas dropped a few more cents. Why now? Why just before the election?
Why were they allowing prices of gas to go up to $5 or $6 before? Then election year, all of a sudden, they decide, oh no, we can't do that, because they knew they weren't going to. They knew they would have no chance of winning the election. This is so obvious, so obvious. Now, if the Jews acted like God's chosen people, in other words, if you had people like, if you had Kahanish Jews and the Hilltop Youth type Jews, let's say they were in charge of Israel. You know what the Hilltop Youth Jews would be doing, and the Kahanish Jews they would be telling the American people the truth. They would tell the American people, first of all, there are 2 billion Muslims in the world who believe in a religion that puts you in danger, that says that all the world has to be Islamicized. And you're facing a great danger here. You must seal the American border to survive. If we were in charge in Israel, we would be telling the American people that. If we were in charge in Israel, we'd be telling you, don't believe what the news media says. They're liars. They're not giving you the truth. They're propagandists for the left. If we were in charge in Israel, we would be telling you that Americans should go on those borders and establish communities on those borders, American patriots. To guard the borders, citizens should be guarding the borders and make citizens' arrests. It's illegal to cross the border. It's still illegal under federal law to cross the border, even though that law is never enforced. Certainly not by the late Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, who have encouraged 20 million illegal aliens to flood across the border. But anyway, we'd have a whole different world here. We'd have a world with leaders. If the Hilltop Youth and the Kahanis were in charge in Israel, we'd have a world that is moral. We'd have a world that is righteous. We'd have a world that is truthful. We'd have the truth. And yes, there'd be a war against us by the evil people. The evil people in the world would wage war against us, but we would win. When you do what's right, when you do what God commands you to do, you're going to win miraculous victories. Those beepers and those walkie-talkies going off, they're examples of Israel's miraculous, incredible ability to do things way beyond what anybody ever expects. If they want to, if they have the will. If we have the will to win, and I'm talking about the Jewish people in Israel, if we have the will to win, we will win decisive, incredible victories, just like in the Six-Day War. In 1967, in 6 days, Israel was outnumbered 100-1, and Israel beat enemies on 3 different fronts from the whole Arab world. In 6 days, they liberated all of Sinai, all of Gaza, all of Judea and Samaria, the Golan Heights, reunited the city of Jerusalem. In 6 days, they did all of that. In 6 days, Israel quadrupled in size. For those of you who have affirmative action educations, quadrupled in size means that Israel was 4 times her original size. In just 6 days, Israel grew, multiplied in size 4 times as much. In 6 days, outnumbered 100 to 1. You don't get that even in James Bond movies. And so, I mean, breathtaking miracles of biblical proportions that we saw in our own day, 1967. And in 1948, when Israel was recreated. I mean, just breathtaking. And instead of saying, wow, what a destiny we have, what a mission we have, what a glorious mission we have, instead of doing that, they have to report to the late Joe Biden, wake him up. They have to wake him up at 4 o'clock in the afternoon when he's in bed and tell him, well, you know what we're going to do with Lebanon? If we have your permission, sir, can we do it, please? And he doesn't even know. He doesn't even know what's going on. He doesn't know where he is. Joey. He doesn't even know where he is. And they have to go and wake him up, or Kamala Harris, the low IQ candidate. And she is low IQ, by the way. They feed her lines, and she memorizes lines, but she's afraid to do interviews. She wasn't afraid in the debate, because in the debate, she was not. That was a debate between Donald Trump and the 2 moderators of ABC News. She wasn't even the main debater. They were debating for the 2 so-called moderators of ABC News were debating for her. Oh, they're so filthy and disgusting, this news media. And yes, it enrages me that Republicans, including Donald Trump, give them legitimacy by allowing them to be the debate moderators. That should never happen. That should never happen. But anyway,
Republicans said never again, and yet they just go on and do it and fall into the same traps. When it comes to politicking, the Democrats are light years ahead of the Republicans.
There's a reason. The Democrats don't give an inch. They're evil, but they stick by what they want, and they don't give an inch. They don't give an inch on abortion. They want abortions right up until the time that the baby is being born. And by the way, those lying pigs in ABC lied. That is exactly what Roe v. Wade was. A woman can have an abortion right up until the time of birth. And when they passed partial birth abortion bills in state legislatures, the Supreme Court struck it down, and other courts struck it down before Roe v. Wade was overturned. That was Roe v. Wade. That's what Kamala Harris does advocate, and that's what ABC advocates. They're baby killers. They've murdered tens of millions of babies. And Trump runs away from the issue because it's unpopular. Look at the American people, what they've become. In every state where there's a vote, the American people vote in favor of abortion, in favor of baby killing. This is baby killing. You're not allowed to murder babies. And I don't care if it's unpopular. You're not allowed to murder babies. What's so complicated about that? But anyway, getting back to this subject, can you imagine what Israel could do? Can you imagine what Israel could be? And can you imagine how this would inspire the righteous Gentiles? The righteous Gentiles in America and in every other country. The number of righteous Gentiles in other countries is much lower than in America. America has probably the highest percentage of righteous Gentiles of any country in the world. But there are a certain number of righteous Gentiles in Europe and other countries, less than in America. Less than in America. I don't care if people are offended. That's the way I see things. Okay? I see the decadence and the depravity and the degeneracy and the anti-Semitism of Europe. I see what's going on there, and I'm sorry. I think America has more righteous Gentiles than other countries. That's my opinion. But there are righteous Gentiles in every country. And Israel could be an inspiration to the righteous Gentiles. What a world it could be. And you know, deep down, most Israeli Jews know that what I'm saying is true, but nobody reaches them with the message because we don't have enough funds. We don't have enough funds to help the Hilltop Youth bring the message to the whole people of Israel. If we had enough funds, we could bring this message to the whole people of Israel. And a lot of Israeli Jews deep down agree with what I'm saying, agree with this message. They're idealists. Jews are naturally idealistic. That's why Jews are so involved. This is part of their DNA that God gave them, because they're supposed to be a light unto the nations, a nation of priests, and a holy nation with a message for the world. So Jews are naturally idealistic, much more than any other people. And that's why you find so many Jews involved in terrible causes too. Terrible causes. They're on both sides of every cause. You'll have the idealistic Jews on the good side and on the bad side, but they're involved. They're not apathetic, generally speaking. They're only apathetic when it comes to their own people. But when it comes to all these other causes, they're not apathetic. You see Jews involved. You know, the Jews were 1% of America's population, and about 1/3 of the contributions made to the Democrat and Republican parties come from Jewish donors. About 1/3. So the contributions made to both parties come from Jewish donors, even though Jews are 1% of the population. And by the way, it's not just that, oh, you might say, wow, the Jews are all rich, which is a lie. You can see over here where I live that all Jews are not rich. Okay, this is Exhibit 1, that all Jews are not rich. Of course, that's not true. But even if a Jew, let's say a Jew is a millionaire, they've done studies on this. Jewish millionaires tend to give about 5 times as much in charity as a non-Jewish millionaire. That's what Jews are very involved. One thing that's not true about the Jews, one stereotype that's not true, they say Jews are cheap. That's not true. Okay, Jews are not cheap at all. Jews are the most generous. Unfortunately, sometimes they're generous with terrible causes, but they give huge amounts to all types of charities and all types of causes. They are not cheap. That's not true. Their critics are the ones who are cheap. But anyway, that's not true about the Jews. There are a lot of things you could say about the Jews, but that really is not true at all. The opposite is true. And so Jews, you see Jews deeply involved, the Orthodox Jews involved in the pro-life movement, and you'll see the self-hating, assimilated Jews involved in the pro-abortion movement. And you'll see Jews deeply involved, very heavily involved in free market movements and conservative economic movements. You know, when Ron Paul, the anti-Semite, and all the other anti-Semites in Ron Paul's and Rand Paul's movement, and they are anti-Semites, when they quote Austrian, they always quote Austrian economists. They always quote the Austrian economists. Every one of the Austrian economists they're quoting was Jewish. Every one of them. Okay, so let's understand something here. The Jews are either Ayn Rand, she was Jewish, she was the big libertarian that the libertarians love, an atheist. You have Ayn Rand, and then you have of course, you have the deeper religious Jews that are pushing for religious principles and very heavily involved in that. Jews are involved much more than other people. And so if we could get Israeli Jews involved on the right side of things, and we could do it if we only had the resources, I'm telling you, we could do it. What a world we could create. Not just for Israel, but for the whole world. It would be a better world. Israel would be an example for the rest of the world, would set the example. We could wake the Jews up if only we had the chance. Now, I'm going to give everybody out there an opportunity to support the Hilltop Youth and support us in our campaign to bring the truth to the people of Israel. I'm going to give you an opportunity to do that. But I just want to say, if there are any, if there are Jews out there who could solve this problem overnight, I'll give you an example. Adelson, Miriam Adelson, okay, the casino queen. She owns the casinos. She owns casinos, and her husband made tremendous amounts of money, tens of billions of dollars in the casino business and other businesses that were immoral. Tens of billions they made. She's probably the richest Jew in the world now. She's worth maybe $40 billion. Probably the richest Jew in the world. If she just made out a check to J.T.F. for $10 million, you know what $10 million is out of, first of all, 40 million. She's worth 40 billion, 40 million. That's 40 million out of, that's 1,000th. Yeah, 1,000th of her, of what she's worth. 1/10 of 1%. Am I right? Yes, I am right. I am right. That would be 1,000th. Would that affect her at all? She could easily make a check out for $40 million. If we just had $5 or $10 million, that would be enough. That would change history overnight. And you know something? With the little that we have, we're already changing history. When we started 3 years ago, so giving our entire budget and focusing entirely on the Hilltop Youth, they had 30 settlements in Judea and Samaria. 30 settlements preventing the Arabs on strategic hilltops, preventing the Arabs from having Arab territorial continuity to take over Judea and Samaria and create a so-called Palestinian terrorist state. Just 30. Now they have 150. In 3 years, they went from 30 to 150. Some of their hilltop communities have 10 Jewish families, or 10 or 20 or 30 Jewish families, and some of their hilltop communities have just 3 or 4 young idealists who've decided to set up a very primitive home and live there just so that the Arabs don't take over the hilltop. But we've come a long way in 3 years with the little meager resources we have, because we have such determined, idealistic, magnificent, self-sacrificing people. These are the giants of our generation, these hilltop youth. And they can serve as an inspiration to good people all across the world. Here's your chance to support them. I don't care how much you're worth. You can help. You can help. Everybody can help. And you should help as much as possible. There are 2 ways you can support the Hilltop Youth. One is going to our Hebrew main page, hayamin.org. Hayamin.org is the Hebrew main page for our movement. It's in Hebrew. The page is in Hebrew, but on top, there's a donate button in English. You'll see a big donate button in English on top. You click on the donate button in English on top, and in several minutes, you can very easily and conveniently donate to the heroic Hilltop Youth. Very easy to do. If you don't want to do it online, if you want to do it through the regular mail, you send checks and money orders made out to J.T.F. And you send it to our P.O. Box, which is J.T.F. P.O. Box 650327, Fresh Meadows, New York, 11365. We're told, and not just told, it'll come true, just like all the other prophecies are coming true, that in the end of days, the Messiah will come, and there'll be a redemption for the whole world, and the whole world will change. There'll be a whole different situation, but for many people, it'll be too late. This is our chance to make a big difference. This is our chance to change things. We see with our own eyes the hand of God in the events that are taking place in the world today. J.T.F. gives you a chance to have an impact in the area which is most critical and most righteous and most essential in the battle for redemption of the world. We're giving you this opportunity. We give you this opportunity, and you're blessed by the fact that you're watching this video and if you're watching our videos, because we don't reach all the people that we want. We wish we could reach a lot more people, and you can all, and by the way, you should also spread the word so we reach more people. But we give you an opportunity to reach people. And we're reaching you with this message. We're giving you a chance to really add meaning to your life, because in the end, you're going to look back and say, what did I do in my life? What did I do? What did I actually accomplish? What did I actually achieve? Did I really do right? Did I really do good? Did I really work to make this a better world? Did I sincerely do that, or just all a bluff? JTF gives you a chance not to be a bluff. JTF gives you a chance to be real. And so I hope that people will take that chance. Not take that chance, but will exploit the opportunity to do righteous things and be righteous and do what God commands us to do to make this a better world. David?
Meanwhile, back in the sewer that's America, in Springfield, Ohio, where with a population of around 50,000 or less, they brought in 20,000 Haitians. And as you heard in last week's show, that a woman was eating a cat. There was a video of a woman skinning a cat in a parking lot. A family came home and found their dog that they left in the yard. Just the head was left. I don't believe in most of these cases they're eating these animals. They're using it for voodoo, their rituals, their satanic rituals that they combined with Christianity that they call Santeria. But it's voodoo, it's evil. And they're worshiping evil, and they need these animals to be sacrificed. Meanwhile, somebody, you know, it was a guy that did this. He took a picture of, and it's labeled Chuck Schumer visiting Springfield, Ohio. And there he is at a barbecue grilling a whole cat on hamburger buns with American cheese on top of it. And he's got a big smile on his face. The thing is, this isn't funny. These people who lived there for decades now have their whole neighborhood screwed up because of the government. And what are they going to do about it? Why do they let it happen? There comes a time when those in power who do stupid things, the only way to stop those stupid things is to get rid of those in power. If you keep voting the same people back in, you're going to get the same results. If you keep voting the same people back in and you think the results are going to be different this time, and if not this time, next time, well, that was the definition of insanity. Keep doing the same thing over and over again, expecting the results to be different.
Let
And
me
that
just,
goes
no, go ahead. Finish what you're going to say. I
and
just
that
want to
goes
give
on
you
a
some.
national scale. If you think prices are going to come down, if you think inflation is going to come down under Kamala Harris, she already said if you're working in the oil industry, you better find another job. If you don't like these millions of third world savages coming into your country, do you think she's going to change that when she's in the top office? You better think long and hard about what you're doing to this country. And I can't believe how stupid and passive the American people are. They're so wishy-washy. I don't understand. Just when did we become a nation of wishy-washy cowards? I am.
Well, what I was going to say is, I remember I was sitting with my mother. I went with my beautiful late mother, Malka Bat Meir, Zichrona Livracha Aleha Hashalom. May she rest in peace, and may her memory be immortalized. I was with my beautiful mother. I used to go for walks with her. She was in her late 80s, and we would go for walks. And we went to a park not far from where I live. And in the park, there was a pond, and they had swans in the pond. I don't know if they were, I think they were swans. I think they were, I don't,
Swans have an extra long neck.
yeah, I think they were swans. They had swans in the park. Beautiful, beautiful birds in the pond, and they'd be there, swimming around, and it was really, really nice. And I saw someone with a dog. Okay, now I'm not saying he wasn't Haitian. He was a black. I think he was an American black guy. And he had a dog, and he told the dog, he directed the dog to go and get one of the swans, and the dog went and grabbed the swan by the neck with his teeth and dragged the swan across to the owner, and the owner put the swan in a bag and tied up the bag. Okay, so things like this really happen. I mean, they really do happen. There are people who do things like this, and I twice saw in a park. I saw somebody come with a dog. This was a different year even. This was many, many years ago. This was in 1976. I was sitting in a park, and I saw someone come with a dog and sent the dog to chase after the pigeons. And he grabbed one of the pigeons and brought the pigeon back with his teeth, in his mouth, brought the pigeon back to the owner, and the owner put the pigeon in a bag and went off with the pigeon with the captured pigeon. So the claim that things like this don't happen, they happen. They happen in the real world. Now, these incidents that I saw were not Haitians, okay? But Haitians do practice voodoo. I mean, they do. I was in prison with Haitians. When I spent 5 years in prison for my activities on behalf of Soviet Jewry, for what I did to free Soviet Jews, okay? When I was the head of the Jewish Defense League. And I'm very proud of what I did. In prison, I was in prison with Haitian inmates. They had voodoo in the prisons. They were doing voodoo. Okay? They really believe in this. Of course, it's superstition. It's crazy. It's ridiculous. Some of them have dolls. They put pins in the dolls. I don't know how familiar people are with voodoo. But just crazy, crazy things that they got from originally coming from Africa. These are traditions that originally come from their religions in Africa. And they brought it to Haiti. Now, I'm not saying all Haitians do this. I'm not saying all Haitians do this, but some do. But some do. So why lie about it? And when they tell us, oh, Kamala Harris was laughing in the debate and they were all laughing it off when Donald Trump said that. When Donald Trump said they eat the dogs and they eat the cats, and they were all laughing. They also laughed and ridiculed and mocked and censored anybody who said that Barack Hussein Obama supported Farrakhan. Remember they did that? In 2008, when he was running, anyone who dared say that Obama supported Farrakhan, the media, first of all, you were censored if you did. They took your videos down. They would not allow you to say that at that time. And you were ridiculed and even the Republican candidate, John McCain, said that's not true, and he defended Obama. He defended his opponent. This was the Republicans at that time were the people, like the guy who catches the ball and runs and scores a touchdown for the other team. That's the Republicans, okay? And that's most Republicans, by the way, okay?
And it still is.
Right. All right. At least Donald Trump, by the way, I have to give him credit for that. That he doesn't do. Okay, he doesn't defend his opponents. He goes after his opponents. That's good. That is good. We need a Republican that goes after his opponents. Okay, and Trump should go after them. They deserve everything Trump says about them is true, but it's only what he doesn't even tell 1% of how guilty they are. But anyway, and by the way, they're responsible for the assassination attempts on him because they're inciting people against him day and night. The media and Kamala Harris and the Democrats, they're responsible for this. And if something happens to him, his blood is on their hands. They're the ones who are doing this. And if it was the other way around, if somebody took a shot at Kamala Harris, that day and night we'd be hearing about how terrible what Trump says and they'd be blaming Trump. Well, it's happening to Trump. Twice it happened to Trump. Twice they tried to, actually 3 times. The Pakistani was arrested, hired by Iran to assassinate Trump. He's on trial now for that. So 3 assassination conspiracies that we know of. And it's because of them. They're inciting people against Donald Trump. And continuing to do it.
Dan Goldman says Trump needs to be eliminated. And there was a news host, one of the journalists who said Trump needs to be shot. And then she quickly corrected herself and put another word there. But the thing is, the word shot, she did that on purpose. That's a subliminal message, like they used to do in movie theaters. A movie theater is 24 frames of film go by every second. On one frame, you stick a bottle of Coca-Cola. You don't see it because it goes by so fast, but that message is in your brain. Gee, I'm thirsty. I think I'll go to the stand and go get a Coke.
I'm sorry, David, though, but I interrupted you. Go ahead. Continue.
No, go ahead.
No,
You're on a
continue with
roll.
what? No, continue with what you have important things that you want to bring up, and
No,
continue.
I only have a few more.
Okay, so go ahead.
I've noticed early in the week, online or ads on television, everything is gear up for the big game. Get this for the big game. Football has replaced baseball as the national pastime. Watching these rapists score touchdowns is not my idea of entertainment, but everything is gear up for the big game. Get ready for the big game. How about getting ready to save your country? And just voting is not enough. If you think you're going to vote once every 4 years and say, I did my duty, that's why the country's in the shape it's in. It's because you've done nothing. The founders said the population must be vigilant for this form of government to succeed. And vigilant is one thing we are not. And just the ignorance and the stupidity of the American people and their point of view is so wishy-washy and moderate. They don't get angry at anything this corrupt, tyrannical government does. Everything is okay, which is why Kamala Harris has a decent chance of winning. Trump should stick to the issues, stop the personal attacks, which he does, and smile once in a while, and stop walking around angry. Actually, I want someone who's angry. I want someone who's dour. I want someone who attacks people that would destroy this country. But the American people are so stupid that they want smiles and kissing babies. They don't think about policy. They don't even realize how much better the 4 years under Trump were than the 4 years under this dynamic duo of the late Joe Biden and retarded Kamala Harris.
But by the way, I just want to say one other thing about the debate. Trump said she's going to take your guns away, and she will. Their goal is to disarm the American people. They really intend to do that. And in some states and places, they already do that. Okay, they will disarm the American people. And then she said, that's ridiculous. I have a gun, and I and Tim Walz are gun owners. Yes, I have no doubt that they're gun owners, because that's the way they do it. The elites can have guns. The Hollywood actors and actresses who are always campaigning for gun control, they have guns. Okay, all the big anti-gun people, all themselves have guns. But they disarm middle-class and working-class people. If you don't have connections, if you're not worth many millions of dollars and have lawyers and other connections and the ability to get permits in states where you're not allowed to have a gun unless you have a special permit, because that's what you have in states like New York and California, you're not going to be able to have a gun. They're going to disarm you. And the tens of millions of illegal aliens they're bringing in this country will have guns because they get the guns. The criminals get the guns. They're
willing to kill you. They're willing to ignore gun laws.
Obviously. They have guns. And you won't have guns to protect your family. And by the way, wait till you see, whether you're armed or not armed. Let me tell you something. When they disarm the American people, when they do that, you are going to see a crime wave like you've never seen before. Because if people are not afraid if these criminals know that people are unarmed, you're going to see an unbelievable crime wave. You won't be safe anywhere. That's what Kamala Harris means. Okay? And it's the end of freedom in the United States when they take the guns away. I'm sorry, David.
No, go. Yeah. When you get on a roll, keep going. Well, yeah, Kamala Harris said she intends to take your guns away. Whether it passes Congress depends on who's in Congress, but she can make an executive law, which is in effect while she's president, and that will be the end of your guns. And if you think, yeah, let them come and get it, they said the same thing in Australia, and Australians were pretty tough people during World War II. And Australians fell all over themselves turning their guns in. You'll be amazed at how quickly these wishy-washy Americans turn their guns in because it's the law.
That's the first thing Hitler did when he took power, was he disarmed the German people. It's the first thing he did.
Yeah,
anyway,
the
go ahead.
government wants to take your guns when they're going to do things to you that would make you want to use those guns against them. And I've seen in a few places about the debate, moderator Lindsay Davis and the other guy that was with her, that they were fired by ABC. I've seen it, and it was confirmed and confirmed and confirmed, but there's just as many stories saying it's not true, and it's not true. She's still there. He's still there.
They're
So
not
you
fired.
have to watch out. You can't just assume something is true. If anything, ABC probably rewarded them with maybe with Christmas bonuses this year for how they handled the debate. And I've seen a few conservative, not many, but so wishy-washy, so weak, saying it was a good debate and they handled it just right.
Anyone who says that is not a conservative. That's not a conservative. That's a traitor. Anyone who says that. That's a traitor. Even people on the left could see clearly how biased they were. They so-called fact-checked Trump 5 times, and all their fact checks were lies. They were debating Trump. They became the main debaters against Trump. Who ever heard of anything like this?
And the Republicans do it every 4 years. They keep saying never again, and then they go ahead and do it. Well, as far as the Bruin decision that, according to the Constitution now and the Supreme Court, you're allowed to carry. You can't be stopped. But of course, in blue states, blue cities, they pass laws that make it impossible to get a gun. And Washington, D.C. is one of those places, known many times, year after year, although not right now. It's the murder capital of the United States. And that's where your elected leaders live, the Washington, D.C. District of Criminals. And crime is way up in Washington, where it's impossible to get a gun. The waiting periods and the tests and the approvals needed. And by the time they get through with your approval, the first approval expired, and you have to go through the whole process again. That's their way of just ignoring or getting around the Supreme Court decision that says you can't stop the American people from carrying to protect themselves. They bring millions, tens of millions of savages into this country, illegally and legally from the third world, and they want to disarm you so you can't protect yourself from these animals they're bringing in. It's a shame that I had to call them animals. It's an insult to animals. Because animals only do things to survive.
But Kamala Harris, she has firearms and brags about it. She was the one in California. She pushed for the laws, the anti-gun laws, the gun grabbing laws. She's advocated for grabbing people's guns, for literally grabbing people's guns and taking them away. But she, of course, gets to keep hers. How can anybody with an ounce of sanity even consider voting for a creature like her?
In the mid-'80s, there was you said the elites have guns. There was a movie actress, she's probably long retired, Jennifer O'Neill. I actually saw her in a John Wayne movie in the 70s. And Jennifer O'Neill was anti-gun all the way. She came out and she was blasting gun owners. She belonged to anti-gun organizations until she shot herself in the stomach with her own gun. And she survived. But that was the end of her anti-gun activities because she came out as such a phony that she had a gun, but she didn't want you to have one. And don't forget, back in the mid-'80s, Under Ronald Reagan, the country was safe compared to the way it is today. Once again, only in comparison, because he increased sentencing guidelines and the states and cities followed along. But the country became safer. Today it's it's worse than the Wild West. It's a shooting gallery in Baltimore, in Detroit, in Chicago, and Washington, D.C. The crime, and Washington, D.C., which was not such a good area outside of where our rulers rule, is now becoming gentrified. There are rich lobbyists that cleaned up various areas, and they're the richest areas in the country. I think one of them is called Georgetown in Washington, D.C.
Georgetown was always rich, but they're expanding beyond Georgetown.
Yeah, and so some areas are being cleaned up, and still it's a criminal gallery. And at least it's affecting some of our people in office. Unfortunately, Mike Gill, who was in the Trump administration, married with 3 kids, was shot and killed by a carjacker. Fortunately, and I'm glad the end result was the carjacker was shot and killed by police after he tried to rob someone else later on. I don't believe in taking these people to court. Artel Cunningham was the shooter who shot Mike Gill. Democratic Representative Angie Craig was assaulted inside her luxury apartment building. How does somebody on $175,000 a year, after you pay taxes, what do you take home? 115? How does she live in a luxury apartment building in Washington, D.C., unless she's getting plenty of money under the table? She was assaulted, beaten up, and they robbed her. And because it happened to her, she's now calling for tougher action against criminals. And don't forget, Washington has some of the toughest gun laws, and yet crime is totally out of hand. Homicides up 35% over, this is 2023 stats because 2024 is still going on. Over 2023 over 2022. Robberies up 67%. Car thefts up 82%. That's what they're doing, carjacking. And some of the carjackers are as young as 12. They come over to your car and point a gun in your face, and they take your car. And theft is up, general theft is up 23%. And this is where our lawmakers work and play. Well, I hope they get it, and they get it good. Whatever they do, I hope comes back and bites them in the rear end. And that's all I have for today. Chaim.
Okay, let's hope people understand the message, because in the end, I mean, one thing I want to say, in the end, good things are going to happen. I think that what we spoke about earlier with what Israel has done just proves that the biblical prophecies are all going to come true. That means someday there's going to be a whole new world. And it's going to be Gan Eden. It's going to be like the Garden of Eden. The whole new world is going to be created with eternal life and with all types of magnificent things that are beyond our understanding or imagination because of the limitations of this world. So there's no reason to give up hope. But again, we're in this world to do good. If we don't do good, if we don't do good, if we don't work to correct the things that are wrong with the world, there's no purpose for our existence. There's no purpose for our being in this world. You were put into this world for that purpose. That's your reason for being in this world. And again, that means you've got to get involved. You've got to do things to make a difference for the Hilltop youth in Israel, and for the J.T.F movement. You should get involved. You should help us out, because we're telling the truth. In your heart, you know we're right, and in your guts, you know they're nuts. For J.T.F. until next week, and for David Ben Moshe, Shalom.